Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Hello everyone and welcome to MedTube again. Today's video will be slightly different from what I have been recording. Today I will discuss my USMLE and Medical Council of Canada examinations experience. Now I'm not really intending to discuss the actual study materials or how I actually studied for it, but rather I would like to share my life experience with it and how I was able to cope with it and manage myself throughout the exams, and alhamdulillah I have passed them. So how did I manage that? I've summarized my points into five. So I have five main points or things I would like to share. The first thing is there really needs to be a balance between your personal life and medical life. In other words, these exams are really time consuming and can be very overwhelming. And even if you study 24/7, 7 days a week, all day long, you won't be able to finish the actual materials required because simply medicine never ends. That's why you really need to be well constructed, and you need to study both smart and hard, not just hard. And at the same time, you should give yourself a break every now and then. So you should study, I usually say, 6 days a week, and during these 6 days should be well constructed. And because if you study all the time 7 days a week, as I've seen with some people, a few people, this can be very stressful. And I think about humans just like receptors. If you keep getting yourself studying over and over and over, you'll get down-regulated over time, and you will lose your drive and initiative at the end. Therefore, there should be really a balance between your personal life, your exercise, your diet, and your studying. Now, speaking about the balance, the best way to have the balance is really to be well constructed again and organized and structured with your studying. To do this, you should have preset goals. Now, for goals, I personally classify them into two things: short-term goals and long-term goals. The reason that we have goals, of course, is you cannot get really organized unless you know what you're doing and what you're working for. So for short-term goals, for example, if you're studying for USMLE Step 2 CK, I expect to see every day what I'm going to finish, and every week what I'm going to achieve, and every month how much am I going to finish with studying and reviewing. So if I'm doing USMLE Step 2 CK, during today I want to finish the cardiovascular system, for example. This week I want to finish the cardiovascular and endocrine systems review. And during these 3 months I want to finish the internal medicine, pediatrics, and OBG, and so forth. So according to my goals, I will set my daily schedule and how many hours I should be spending reviewing and studying. Now, speaking of long-term goals, those are really important as well. What I mean by the long-term goals is the very first thing, actually, which is very fundamental, is to set your exam and your testing day. The reason is you should be really a commitment to it, and you should be having that drive and that spirit behind studying. And unless you have something that really makes you studying, you could be having you wouldn't be having really the same amount of energy and activeness while you're studying. Therefore, the very first step when you're preparing for these exams is to book your exam online and register for it. Other long-term goals which are important is to really find out what you want to be in the future, which specialty you want to go for. So let's say your plan A is to be internal medicine, plan B is radiology. You should be planning ahead of time for many things. One is observerships and clerkships, for example. as many observerships and clerkships require in many countries to be planning ahead of time, 8 to 9 months ahead of time, while you register online, and therefore these things really require planning also ahead of time. So when you set your long-term goals, you kind of have an idea of what scores you need, what you really need to focus on, which clerkships you need to apply for, and so forth. So setting your goals is really one of the first things. And once you get your goals set, you can be able to invent your personalized data schedule. And I like it to call it personalized because what works for me or what works for person A may not work for person B, may not work for person C. The person who really knows you the most is you, and therefore it makes sense that you really make your own schedule, because you may be able it's maybe enough for you to study 2 hours a day while another person is 5 hours a day. You may like to study in the morning hours, another person may like to study in the evening hours, and so forth. So you really need to figure out what really fits you the most. Now after you do these, a very important thing is to really practice. Now for these exams, I like to think about it just like a driving test. If you have a driving test and you really know the theory very well, you know that you're stopping at the red signals, you gotta keep your lanes, and when you turn right or left, you gotta give signals and so forth. So unless you really practice driving, you won't be able to pass the test. And the same thing applies to many things, including our licensing exams. So if you have an OSCE or even MCQs, you need to practice them a lot until you know and ace the technique of answering questions. Because the more you do questions, you will really improve your reading skills, you improve your comprehension, your speed of thinking and linking things together, and even the speed of finding those keywords in case scenarios, especially for USMLE examinations. This is a very fundamental and cornerstone in these exams. You need to practice question banks as much as possible. And whenever you're practicing, try to simulate it just like as the real test. So if you're doing question banks for USMLE Step 2 CK, make sure you randomize the questions while you're practicing, because this is the real exam. It's randomized questions. Make sure you do full blocks, just like in the real exam as well. Make sure you time them, giving yourself 1 minute or less per question, because this is what the real exam is about as well. So practice, practice, practice. This is a cornerstone and for passing these exams. Another part I'd like to talk about is the exam day. What you really need to do on the exam day. The most significant thing I can think about is to have a good night's sleep on the night before. Unless you really sleep well, you won't be able to focus and concentrate on the exam. And think of it this way actually. If you study late till midnight or till 1 or 2 a.m., the amount of knowledge or information you're likely to benefit from is much less than the amount of benefit you will get from sleeping. And if you get a good night's sleep even 2 days before the exam, that would be even better. Now speaking, when you wake up for the exam day, make sure you do the usual of what you've been doing. If you have a morning breakfast, have the same morning breakfast. If you have morning exercise, do the morning exercise, and so forth. And when you go to the exam, during the examination itself, a very important thing is to make sure you make the best out of your break. So in certain examinations like USMLE's, you'll have 1 hour break, and you'll have multiple blocks, 7 or 8 blocks, and you have the total freedom of using this 1 hour. You can use it. You can just say use 10 minutes between the first and second blocks, and then 15 minutes between the fourth and the fifth blocks, and so forth. The best technique I've seen and experienced personally is to take as many breaks as possible, preferably 10 to 12 minutes each break. The idea behind it is really to get refreshed, because in such a long exam, 8 to 10, 8, 9 hours examination, you need to be well refreshed throughout your examination to make sure you maintain the same level of concentration and focus during answering. Because sitting behind the screen for long hours will really make you start losing your energy and spirit with answering. Therefore, when you take this break, make sure you move around, get your circulation moving, do a few stretching exercises, take a candy bar, drink a juice, an orange juice. You may use the washroom if you need to. So make sure you use the breaks very well. And preferably even for the exam, for the testing center, make sure you visit it as well ahead of time. Make sure you know where the washrooms are, where the registration is, what papers you need to bring. Double check all your papers, your registration papers, everything is good. This is all important. Now, regarding answering the questions themselves, this is also, I thought it would best fit here. When you're answering the questions, make sure you remember the following, and trust me on this. Read each case scenario from A to Z. Read it from the first word to the very last word. Do not start from the end or from down up. Some people do this, and I believe it's not a good idea. Because even if you start from the bottom, you're very likely gonna need to get back to the case scenario again and look for something in the case that you need for the answer. So you'll simply lose a few seconds of your time because you're gonna get back to the case anyways, and you're probably gonna get biased as well when you look at the case. If you know what they're asking for, you're gonna get biased for what you're looking for. But if you start from the beginning and expecting the worst question possible, you will read the whole case with your full concentration, with your full guts, and highlighting all the possible important information you feel are important, and then and then reading the last sentence of what they're asking for. This is, I feel, has benefited me the most. And of course, another thing is to read all of your options. I repeat, read all the options. Do not read just one answer or one option and think it's the correct one and just choose it. No, read all the options. In these exams, and most of the licensing exams, there is no right or wrong. There is the most likely answer, or the most appropriate answer, and the best next step, and the best investigation possible. There is no right or wrong again. Therefore, you need to read all of your options and make sure you pick up the best answer that fits. Now, let's say you couldn't really find an answer. The best thing I suggest is to pick up the most likely answer you think is correct, flag the question, and move on. Again, select an answer, flag the question, move on. Do not waste more than 1 minute per question. Never ever waste more than 1 minute. At the end, you'll probably have 5 to 10 minutes extra. At that time, get back to the flagged questions, read them again. You'll probably find something new about them, and read the question A to Z again. You'll probably find something you haven't seen the first time, and hopefully you'll be able to answer it. And I've tried this many times. I can even try it with the question banks. You will feel that the second time you read it, it will make sense more to you. And also something I feel very important is if you have two answers that sound very logic, if you're really struggling between two options, get back to the question. The answer is lurking somewhere in the case scenario given. If you have two answers likely to be correct, get back to the question and read it again. The last thing is, I really urge you to be persistent, confident, faithful, hardworking, patient, and above all, very very important thing is again to be organized and planned and structured. The way I think about it is, let's say you're traveling from Toronto to Hamilton. Unless you really know where you're targeting and where you're heading to, you're just gonna keep driving in circles and circles, and you'll get deprived out of resources, and you'll be running out of gas, and you'll simply get nowhere. Therefore, it's very important again to put goals for yourself and to know where you're going for and to know when your exam day is. And that's why one has to be organized, especially with these exams, as they are truly a challenge, but also very rewarding at the end, both for your exams themselves, for your medical school, for your own knowledge, for your experience. You'll find that they really pay off a lot for you. That's all I can think about for the moment. I hope it was as concise and summarized as possible. Good luck everyone for your exams. Feel free to message me if you have any questions. And of course, I would like to say Alhamdulillah for the blessings that I was able to pass through these exams. Thanks very much to my parents, to my family, my friends, everyone who's been supportive. And Ramadan Mubarak to everyone, and good luck.